Hi, welcome to Spare Room Studio. I'm Jackie. If you're new here, thanks for joining us, and if you are a returning viewer, thanks for coming back. Today I'm going to be colouring in Reyda Prints Adorable Girls, and I'm using all pastels and gel crayons. I had a viewer of the channel ask if I would consider a colour along using oil pastel. And I'm pretty new to oil pastels, so I don't feel very proficient yet in using them. But I thought that showing you this video sped up will at least just show you part of the process that I used to create this particular image. I'm still feeling my way. Each page that I do with oil pastels, I do something a bit different. So I don't really have a prescribed method to share with you just yet. With this one, I started with a fairly basic mid-tone skin colour, and then I used a pink to warm it up. Then I came back with a slightly lighter colour, and then I'm going to use some darker shades for shadow. You can see here that I'm using a cotton bud to blend this. This first part of the picture is using the Pentel oil pastels, and they are quite a hard oil pastel. Later I'll be using the Meeden, and they are very soft. So for this first part of the picture, I like to blend those colours, not necessarily a very fine graduated blend, but I like to try and blend the colour and get an idea of where I need the various tones to be on the face. And then I come back and use some different techniques as I go along. This particular book has been bought specifically for me to use oil pastels in, and to loosen up my style and try to think about different ways of portraying portraits. This book, the illustration style is quite stylistic. It's not particularly realistic. It is recognisable obviously as a face, but it's not terribly realistic, and it's not overly stylised either. So it makes it a good choice for me personally to use oil pastel. And one of the important things with oil pastel, if you're going to use them in a colouring book, is to think about how easily it's going to be to get into some of those tight details. And you need to be looking for an image that has lots of wide open big spaces, and this one, having no backgrounds, is perfect as well for exploring different ways of using the oil pastel and gel crayon in backgrounds. So I think that the choice of image has a lot to play in whether you have a very successful experience with the oil pastels. So there is the darker tone that I put down. It's quite warm, but it's a darker tone to start getting some of the shadows and definition into the features and so on. And you can see that I haven't necessarily blended that very carefully. I'm still using the cotton bud. You can use your finger, of course, or you can use paper stumps, and I think there are some sort of silicone tools that you could possibly try to blend and move around the oil pastels. The Meeden oil pastels are very, very soft. I find that they move very easily, and sometimes I just use the cotton bud to push the oil pastel around into those smaller, tighter areas. But if I could say anything as a tip for anyone thinking of using oil pastels, or considering whether to buy some, I think this is a medium that you really do need to spend a lot of time playing with yourself, and because I don't have very much experience using them, I am finding it difficult to think of ways to describe what I'm doing, explain what I'm doing, and give you a description of what it feels like and so on, because there really isn't much that you can compare it to. All of the other mediums that we tend to use in adult colouring books, there really isn't anything very similar to oil pastel at all. Even wax crayons, they react and behave quite differently to these oil pastels. The oil pastels, particularly these Meaden ones, and I can't speak for many other brands because I just haven't used very many brands and I don't intend to. The Meaden are very soft and greasy and buttery, so it's almost slippery to use it. And you can build up lots of colour. You can see here that I'm using a light colour over the hair there, and it is working. You can build up quite a bit of colour. It does overlay on top of itself quite a bit, and that surprised me given that this is a colouring book and it's an Amazon printed colouring book using glorified copy paper. I was quite surprised at how much pastel I could actually layer and build up on this paper. If you have a very textured paper with a lot of tooth, you're going to be able to build up even more colour and create different effects from what I'm achieving here in a Amazon printed colouring book. So I'm sorry that I can't be, too informative or too descriptive with this particular video. Unless you've used oil pastels, it's really difficult to find a way to describe it to anything else so that you can understand what it feels like. I think it's something that you really need to experience for yourself. So for me, some of the downsides of working with oil pastels is that it is quite messy. You will see me from time to time using a wet wipe to clean my hands in between. So it is very, very messy. It's difficult to get into tiny, small spaces because the pastels are quite chunky, and as I've mentioned, these ones are particularly soft. So that makes it hard to get into some places, some areas. And really, the fact that you have to seal your oil pastels because closing a book otherwise is going to be difficult. You will need to have something like a wax-proof paper or something that's not going to stick to the pastel too bad. And you've got the potential of smearing it, so you do need to seal your oil pastel. And thanks to the videos of Maia at Coloured by Maia and Annika at Axic Fumbles, I've used satin glazing liquid quite successfully to seal my pages, but for some people that will be too much of a extra step to do. So you need to think about these things before you embark on using a new medium. On the plus side, I particularly bought oil pastels on purpose after finding some old ones in my son's room that I had never used before. I played with those a little bit and thought that it would be an interesting new medium for me to try and master. So I bought some Pentel oil pastels and the Meaden oil pastels in sales. And I don't intend to have a huge collection of oil pastels, but this will be enough for me to get started. And I purposely bought them because it's going to make me have to get out of my comfort zone a little bit and think about different ways of colouring various subjects that don't rely on fine blends and lots of detail. So one thing that could be deemed a negative of the oil pastels is actually a positive for me in terms of it's going to force me to loosen up my style. I want to try and start thinking about creating much more lively, bold, energetic and different types of portraits, rather than striving for photo realism or any sort of realism that I've felt that I've needed to pursue in the past. So I purposely want to loosen up my style, and so this is a medium that is definitely going to force me to have to think about things a little bit differently. So you can see here that I'm actually leaving the colour rather bold and chunky now. I am still using the cotton bud, and all I'm doing here really is flattening out the harder edges of the oil pastel in areas where I feel like it's not reading too well. But I do want to leave a reasonable amount of texture and chunkiness to this oil pastel. I also want to start using different colours. So I want to choose colours that are a little bit more unusual for a skin tone. So what I'm doing here is in areas where there is a shadow, sometimes you get what is called a reflected light. And so I've decided to try using a very cool light colour to show a bit of that reflected light. Here I'm adding white back in, so I'm thinking about the areas where the light is going to hit the face the most, and using white for that particular highlight. So you can get warm highlights and cool highlights. You can also get warm shadows and cool shadows. So that's what I'm playing about with a little bit here. I'm certainly no expert at maintaining or achieving these sorts of things with my colouring. So another reason why I'm not that confident at doing a structured colour along with oil pastels for you at this stage. My advice would be to perhaps watch some YouTube channels of practicing artists who are actually using oil pastels to create their own artwork, and they will be much more proficient at teaching you how to use oil pastels to their best advantage. So my thinking here is that I want to start using some more unusual and bold colours in a portrait, and it's very much a case of I add a colour, if I like it I keep going, if I don't I'll address it and add a different colour to it, and I'm building it up on top of each other. Sometimes I get a result I really like quite quickly, other times I need to keep layering the colour up and work out what it is that I'm actually liking and wanting to achieve. I also use the cotton bud in different ways, so sometimes I'll smooth it out very simply, other times I'll twist the cotton bud trying to get different lines, different effects. Sometimes even with applying the oil pastel, I will twist the pastel as I'm applying it, so you get thick and thin areas, you get different texture, you get different intensity with it, and it's all very much a case of trying it and experimenting. This is sort of something that comes a bit intuitively rather than being told how to do it. So now I'm going to try using, pardon me for my voice cracking and moving in and out. So now I'm going to try a Prismacolor pencil. And what I found with the Prismacolors is that because they're nice and soft, they do sometimes work with the pastel. A harder pencil will just push the thick areas of oil pastel aside. But on the areas that are not too heavily, not too thick and not too heavily used, I am able to use the Prismacolor pencil, and particularly on the printed lines of the original drawing. If they're not heavily covered by the oil pastel, I am able to use the Prismacolor over the top of it. So that's what I'm doing here, and in between I'm just cleaning the tip of the pencil off because it is picking up some of the oil pastel as I do that. You can come back after you've sealed the oil pastel with satin glazing liquid and use coloured pencil over the top of it. That is something that I have tried and has worked okay. So you do have that option as well if you want to put some details back in. I decided I liked seeing some of the black original lines of the drawing. It's been covered and obliterated in some areas, but I like it being left in other areas. So all I'm doing as I go along is assessing the illustration style, thinking about whether it's a look that I like, and if I don't like it, I'd cover it, and if not, I'm leaving it. These are Montmartre Fluoro oil pastels, otherwise known as neon in other parts of the world, and used sparingly they can create some really nice highlights. They can put a bit of punchy colour in to bring your attention to certain areas and so on, but these particular ones are very hard, and what I'm finding is that they're not working over the top of that soft oil pastel very well at all, and I'm not particularly enjoying the colour too much. So I'm just using it sparingly, and really just to show you that there are various options that you can use, but I wasn't really happy with the result of that particular neon pastel over the top of the Meaden. So I'm just using the cotton bud again to just sort of gently smudge it or smear it where I feel like that's needed. Sometimes it's good to have a hard edge, other times you want to smooth it off. But my goal is to keep things rather lively, so I want it to be chunky, and I'm showing you here that I've kept it very textural. There's a lot of movement there. You can see the way I've applied the oil pastel, and I quite enjoy the way that looks, and that's how I was actually aiming to do that. So here I've used gel crayons in the background with a stencil, and now I'm just going to show you how I would apply satin glazing liquid over the top of that. I use an angled brush, and it's a soft brush, but it's not a floppy brush. It's got some sort of body to it. So I find that this particular brush works quite well for applying the satin glazing liquid. Now, if you want a really careful result, I'd suggest that you put the satin glazing liquid in, working in one direction only, and then perhaps working in the opposite direction to get a nice smooth result. Because I don't really want to obliterate all of that texture in the oil pastel, I'm not being too careful with how I apply the satin glazing liquid either. It tends to dry quite flat, but I've put it on this way because I thought if it did dry with a textural finish showing the brush strokes, that wouldn't bother me too much either, and it might add to that really textural look of the oil pastel. So you can see that I'm using it quite quickly. This footage is sped up a bit, but I am applying it quite quickly, and I'm also not being too careful about how I'm doing it. However, those brush strokes are not particularly heavy, so I'm taking care to not smear any of the gel crayon or the oil pastel around, but I'm just trying to get sort of everything completely covered, so that it will be sealed and that oil pastel will not transfer onto the opposite page or smudge in any way. I applied the satin glazing liquid quite thickly on this particular page. So because it is an Amazon Australia printed book, I found that the moisture that's in that satin glazing liquid did make the page curl up quite badly. But I have the book closed now that it's dry with several heavy items sitting on it, and it will flatten out again. I've also applied that satin glazing liquid quite thickly. I don't really want to come back and do another coat, so I make sure that I cover it quite thickly and then I allow that to dry naturally. You can put a hairdryer on it and speed the process up a bit, but I tend to just put the satin glazing liquid on it, put the book away somewhere where it's not going to be disturbed, and just leave it. I think it probably took about 24 hours to be completely dry. When I came back to it, it was completely dry, and the temperatures here at the moment are cool, but it's been dry, so it's not humid in any way. So now I've come back, this is the next day, and I'm just showing you how the page has curled up a little bit there. And I want to show you how that looks, the finished result, how it has dried. So you can see some of that texture, you can see some of the built up areas of the oil pastel. You can see that it's not rubbing off on my finger there at all. I've completely sealed it, and it's not going to transfer onto the other page. It's no longer going to smudge or anything like that. So this is what I used. It's the Golden Satin Glazing liquid, and yeah, I just really wanted to show you that a lot of the shine has gone off of that as it has dried. It's dried quite matte, it's not glossy. It has flattened it out a little bit, but you can still see all the texture and movement in the oil pastel. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video and you can get something useful out of it. Until the next time, take care everyone. Bye now.